including all of Obama's top people, all of them. And they had a big meeting on this, and the next day, things changed dramatically on the Russia narrative, and changed in a way that would support the Russia allegations that would go on to undermine the entire first term of Donald J. Trump. And Matt is going to help us lay out this whole story.
Today, the House Intelligence Committee Oversight Majority Staff report that investigated that January 2017 assessment that President Obama had manufactured with fake intelligence in order to achieve, knowingly using false intelligence in order to get to the conclusion that he wanted to promote to the American people that Putin had acted in favor of President Trump winning that election in 2016. The report we released today, line by line, goes through it, dissecting and debunking the knowing falsehoods and lies that were included in that assessment with the specific intent to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump.
Barack Obama's rise was marketed as nothing short of a political revolution, a historic turning point where hope and change would finally collide with reality. But beneath the soaring speeches, glowing profiles, and glossy magazine covers lay a career built less on courage and conviction, and more on careful choreography and media spectacle. The image was flawless, the branding airtight, and the myth obsessively guarded until sharp critics like Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard cut through the veneer with surgical precision. What emerged wasn't a groundbreaking visionary or fearless reformer, but a master of performance whose greatest legacy was selling polished style as if it were lasting substance, leaving America inspired yet ultimately shortchanged.
In this 2020 House document, we're just now seeing that Brennan, who was running CIA under Obama, was confronted by a CIA officer about the flaws in the dossier. The guy was like, dude, we can't rely on this. We can't use this to say there was aspiration to help Trump. We shouldn't be sticking it in the annex to our report, or relying on it in any way. This needs to come out. It's fatally flawed. Brennan allegedly said, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true?
The implications of this are frankly nothing short of historic. Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office.
Barack Obama has long been treated like the untouchable brand name of modern politics, the polished icon whose speeches could hypnotize crowds and whose presence was hailed as the dawn of a new era of leadership. But peel away the layers of glowing magazine covers, carefully choreographed interviews, celebrity endorsements, and endless sound bites of lofty rhetoric, and the legend begins to resemble less a statesman and far more a salesman with impeccable marketing. That's exactly where Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard aimed their fire. Two voices from very different backgrounds and political angles converged on the same target, dismantling the glossy facade with precision until nothing but a hollowed-out image and a trail of contradictions remained.
Here's Trump just now. He was just caught on camera saying, well, we'll play both of them in succession. Let her rip.
Witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard. What they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up to 2020 in the election. They tried to rig the election, and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. It wasn't.
Megyn Kelly wasted no time exposing how Obama's entire political career was constructed on performance. Not performance in office marked by bold decisions or tangible results, but performance as pure theater. The cadence of his speeches, the deliberate rhythm of his pauses for applause, and the carefully timed smiles that seemed rehearsed down to the millisecond. These weren't signs of authentic leadership or deep conviction. They were the marks of a man who mastered branding, stagecraft, and optics far better than actual governance. Kelly laid bare the uncomfortable truth that millions fell in love not with substance or results, but with the carefully packaged idea of Obama, the illusion of transformation wrapped neatly in slick eloquence and glowing media adoration. The outcome wasn't revolution or reform. It was marketing with a teleprompter, politics as product placement, and leadership reduced to a performance act.
We learned that intelligence community assessment of January 17 was set to downplay Russian interference in the 2016 election. And then after a meeting with Obama and the top intelligence community officials, or at Obama's direction at least, the intelligence community did a complete 180 and played up Russian interference.
Tulsi Gabbard took the scalpel to the next layer, dissecting how the man who campaigned on ending wars and rooting out corruption ended up serving as one of the most loyal guardians of the status quo. The wars didn't end. They metastasized, stretching from Libya to Syria while Afghanistan dragged on in endless cycles of blood and bureaucracy. Promises to hold Wall Street accountable evaporated into thin air as financial elites not only survived the crash, but thrived, bailed out and protected under Obama's watch. Ordinary Americans who believed they had cast a ballot for real change instead watched the same old machine roar back to life, greased by the same insiders and lobbyists Obama had once promised to confront. Tulsi painted him not as a revolutionary, but as the ultimate establishment figure, a man who preached hope, campaigned on reform, and posed as a unifier, yet quietly delivered continuity for the very powers he was supposed to restrain, shielding the swamp instead of draining it.
This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious it should concern every single American because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. What we saw occur here, as the documents we released detailed, was that we had a sitting president of the United States and his cabinet and leadership team, quite frankly, who were not happy with the fact that President Trump had won the election, that the American people had chosen Donald J. Trump to be the next president commander-in-chief of the United States.
Kelly amplified this by skewering the cult of personality that shielded him from real accountability. The media didn't treat Obama like a president. They treated him like a celebrity brand, a cultural phenomenon to be celebrated rather than a political figure to be scrutinized. Every glossy magazine cover, every softball interview, every fawning late-night comedy bit reinforced the image of a flawless leader while burying the failures of policy under layers of applause. Coverage wasn't about governance. It was about vibes. Symbolism became the story, and substance slipped quietly through the cracks. Instead of pressing him on broken promises, the press elevated him into an untouchable icon. Kelly cut straight to the heart of it. This wasn't journalism, it was worship. It wasn't reporting, it was PR with a teleprompter, ensuring that any criticism was drowned out in a tidal wave of glowing profiles and carefully staged narratives.
From what was released by Tulsi last Friday, that was all at Obama's direction. He made clear he wanted that 180, and they had the flimsiest of evidence to do it. In particular, this piece about the Russians aspired to help Trump win. So you and I talked about that earlier this week and what they did.
Gabbard added the sting of betrayal, reminding audiences that Obama's campaign had been powered by grassroots energy, ordinary people who truly believed they were electing a leader who would dismantle the old order. But once in office, those same hopeful supporters were left behind as Obama surrounded himself with corporate advisors, establishment Democrats, and well-entrenched career insiders. The man who promised to drain influence out of Washington instead opened the floodgates for more of it, proving his allegiance was never to the people cheering him on, but to the machine that elevated him there. Kelly took particular pleasure in dismantling the myth of Obama as a great unifier. She pointed out how his rhetoric of unity was less a principle than a convenient cloak, one that sounded noble but was deployed to shut down dissent and mask inaction. Every time Americans demanded accountability, Obama responded with soaring speeches about bipartisanship, as though flowery language could substitute for concrete policy. The result was gridlock packaged as compromise, stagnation spun as prudence. In practice, unity under Obama meant doing nothing in a way that looked inspiring. Tulsi struck directly at the heart of his foreign policy record. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate, who had promised to end reckless interventions, instead presided over drone strikes that killed civilians and destabilized entire regions. His administration expanded surveillance, escalated conflicts, and cloaked it all under the banner of moral responsibility. Gabbard tore into the hypocrisy of a man celebrated as a peace president while his policies delivered anything but peace. To her, Obama wasn't a visionary, but a carefully scripted contradiction, a leader who could charm global audiences while leaving behind fractured regions and disillusioned citizens. Obama was less a president than a lifestyle product, sold to the public as the embodiment of cool, the political version of a sleek tech gadget everyone wanted but no one truly needed. And like most overhyped gadgets, once the shine wore off, the realization hit, it was never as groundbreaking as advertised.
This document was then used as the foundation for everything that came next. It was essentially a years-long coup that was launched against President Trump before he even had the opportunity to take his oath of office and be sworn in as President of the United States. So, as you know, there was a Mueller investigation that went on for years, cost taxpayers nearly $40 million. There were 2 congressional impeachments. President Trump and almost every member of his family were smeared and attacked, faced lawsuits, depositions. High-level officials were investigated. Some were arrested and put in jail. The list goes on and on about the ramifications of this, but foundational to it all was the fact that we had in President Obama and his leadership team, people who did not want to accept the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump in 2016.
Tulsi reinforced the point by exposing how Obama's carefully manufactured brand carried devastating real-world consequences. By elevating style over substance, he effectively lowered the bar for accountability in American politics. People became so enamored with the man that they excused the policies, the wars, the bailouts, and the corporate coziness that defined his administration. None of it provoked the outrage it should have because his charisma functioned as a protective shield, blinding supporters to hard realities. Gabbard described this as the most dangerous trick of all, convincing millions that symbolic gestures mattered more than measurable results. Kelly then hammered away at Obama's economic record, exposing how inequality widened while Wall Street quietly feasted. Yet, thanks to his polished image and relentless media adoration, the suffering of ordinary Americans was drowned out beneath glossy magazine covers celebrating his intellect, style, and charm. It wasn't leadership, it was a triumph of style over justice, a masterclass in marketing dressed up as governance.
Service to the American people that former President Obama's office and others who are criticizing the transparency that is being delivered by releasing these documents. They are doing a disservice to the American people and trying to deflect away from their culpability in what is a historic scandal.
She's a person, tries to be friends with everybody, tries to reach across the aisle. She's got that whole aloha spirit.
The answer to that statement can very clearly be found throughout all of the documents that we have released, showing that Russia.
Tulsi added another blow by highlighting how Obama's legacy continues to haunt the American political landscape. The disappointment he left behind paved the way for deep cynicism, fueling distrust in politicians and creating the perfect environment where future disruptors and opportunists could thrive. His failure to deliver real change wasn't just a personal letdown, it was a generational betrayal with lasting scars. By selling hope and delivering mediocrity, Obama disillusioned millions, leaving the political system weaker, the institutions less trusted, and the people far more jaded than before. Kelly savored the irony of it all. Here was a man who entered the stage as the anti-establishment outsider, yet ultimately left as the establishment's most loyal guardian. He was hailed as the future, yet governed like a polished replica of the past. Obama was stripped of the aura that had shielded him for so long, revealed not as a revolutionary but as a product, crafted, polished, and relentlessly sold to a public desperate for something new. His speeches were the wrapping paper, his image the shiny bow, but inside the box was nothing more than recycled politics, old failures rebranded as innovation.
None of them are addressing this fact that there was a shift, a 180-degree shift from the intelligence community's assessment leading up to the election to the one that President Obama directed be produced after Donald Trump won the election that completely contradicted those assessments that had come.
Kelly exposed the vanity, the obsession with being adored, the relentless pursuit of cultural cool points that defined Obama's rise. Gabbard revealed the betrayal, the cold reality that behind every soaring promise of hope was the same entrenched machinery grinding on, untouched and unchallenged. Together, they dismantled the myth, leaving only the raw, uncomfortable truth behind. Barack Obama wasn't the change America had been waiting for. He was the salesman who convinced the nation that charisma could substitute for courage, that branding could replace leadership, and that inspiration alone was enough to build a legacy. And once the illusion is shattered, it cannot return. Kelly mocked the way history was rewritten in real time, with journalists turning even the most ordinary events into glowing myths. A family trip to an ice cream parlor became evidence of his supposed relatability. Shooting hoops was recast as proof of his connection to the common man. Gabbard reminded audiences that this wasn't leadership at all. It was marketing disguised as humanity, theater packaged as authenticity. The real legacy wasn't transformation. It was the elevation of optics into an art form, where style triumphed again and substance was quietly buried.
So they call this meeting with all the Obama top people, and no revised PDB has been issued yet. No revised intelligence community assessment has happened yet. The last thing that happened in the intel community was, we're going to tell them that there really was no significant Russian interference, at least insofar as election apparatus goes. And FBI said, we're out, we're going to issue our own. And then Clapper said, all right, well, let's just pause everything. Then everybody gets together. Right after that, before any revised intel happened, before anything happened, they began leaking to the media. WAPO, New York Times, CNN, saying something diametrically opposed, saying, Russia interfered.
Kelly reminded everyone that Obama's supposed intellectual brilliance was just as overhyped as his carefully polished persona. Yes, he could read a teleprompter with elegance and cadence, but the moment he went off script, the magic thinned noticeably. Kelly joked that the media clung desperately to those rare moments of improvisation as though they were gospel, even when the substance was hollow or repetitive. The cult of Obama turned simple sentences into scripture, elevating style over meaning. And yet, behind the endless praise was the glaring truth that his presidency was riddled with contradictions and compromises that never lived up to the grandeur of his words. Gabbard sharpened the critique by circling back to foreign policy, where the myth of Obama's restraint collapsed under the weight of hard reality. She hammered home the uncomfortable point that while Americans swooned over his charisma, people across the globe felt the real sting of his choices. Gabbard left no doubt that his foreign policy wasn't a beacon of hope or progress. It was business as usual, dressed up with smoother delivery and better speeches.
Speaking of Barack Obama, he decided to drop a post on X today, and I thought, okay, maybe in the wake of the Pete Hegseth presser, he's going to say something like, no matter how you feel about the Iranian strike, hats off to our, boys in blue, our guys in the bombers. He went a different way. This is what it was.
I'm curious how you're thinking about this eulogy specifically in the moment and all the tensions that you just brought out.
I didn't even want to talk. I was so mad. Part of the reason I think I ended up having anything to say at that moment was when I heard some of the victims' families forgive the shooter, and I thought, all right, let's see if maybe this is a way America can hear me.
Kelly pivoted back to the domestic stage, where she mercilessly eviscerated Obama's hollow track record on unity. She painted the picture of a president who spoke endlessly about bridging divides, but in practice left the nation more fractured than before. His administration fueled partisanship not through his words alone, but through his constant failure to deliver meaningful results. Hope and change quickly calcified into stalemate and disappointment, a cycle of speeches without solutions. Kelly stressed that the very divisions he promised to heal only deepened under his leadership, leaving Americans cynical and exhausted. The unity, like everything else in his brand, was just another carefully rehearsed sales pitch. Then came the hammer blow from Gabbard, who dismantled the myth of Obama as a reformer of Washington. She laid out how he had every opportunity to push for structural change, campaign finance reform, tackling corruption, breaking the toxic revolving door between lobbyists and lawmakers, but instead chose to fortify the very system he had vowed to upend. Gabbard shredded the illusion of Obama as a reformer, instead painting him as the establishment's most effective defender, a man who could pacify the public with lofty speeches while quietly cutting deals with the same insiders who had always pulled the strings. Gabbard piled on by exposing the hypocrisy of his self-styled role as a global elder statesman. Obama positioned himself as a guardian of democracy and fairness, while quietly living the life of the elite, hobnobbing with billionaires, vacationing in luxury, and attending exclusive galas far removed from ordinary citizens. Gabbard mocked the contradiction with precision.